All right, all right. Welcome to True Night and Day True Crimes. We about to get into the Sarah Boone guilty verdict. Yesterday they, she was, you know, um, they say she was guilty of second-degree murder. So we're gonna go ahead and get into this, this verdict. So make sure y'all come in and smash the like button. I'm still kind of scrambling for to pull this stuff up real quick. So in the meantime, just come in and smash the like button, and let's go ahead and get into this verdict, which we're gonna do a commentary over. All right, so hit that like button, double tap the screen, hit that like button on your way in. We're gonna go ahead and get into this. All right. All right, let's get into this.
But first, just into the newsroom, Sarah Boone has been found guilty for killing her boyfriend by leaving him zipped in a suitcase. West 2's Haley Crumbleholm was there as the verdict was read. Haley joins us live now. What can you tell us, Haley?
So it took about 2 weeks to get to this point where the jury could head in and start deliberating. And it only took them about an hour and a half to come up with their verdict. They found Sarah Boone guilty. Now, throughout this trial, Sarah Boone's defense has made the argument that Boone was a victim of battered spouse syndrome, arguing she suffered abuse at the hands of George Torres, the man she was found guilty tonight of killing. The prosecution said that syndrome is not a license to kill. Now, before the verdict was read, those in the room were instructed multiple times by the judge to leave if they thought they were going to have a strong emotional reaction. So it was pretty much silent in the courtroom as that verdict was read. But once we did leave the courtroom, we did see some of Torres' family getting emotional once they had left. The family didn't want to speak tonight, but we did hear from both Boone's defense and from attorneys for the state. The state says that this has brought some closure for the Torres family. The defense says they were obviously not happy with the outcome, and they said they do expect Boone to file an appeal, though both of those sides will be back in court December 2nd for a sentencing hearing. We're going to hear from both sides coming up at 11 o'clock. Live in Orange County, Haley Crumbleholm.
All right, we're going to go ahead and switch over to the court TV, to the verdict. Like I said, smash that like button. We're going to go ahead and get into this court TV verdict. I mean, it's the verdict on the court TV.
There cannot be any emotional outbursts when the verdict is read. Does everybody understand that? I see everybody nodding their heads. Okay. All right. State, are we ready to bring in our jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, are we ready to bring in our jury?
Yes, Judge.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in our jury. Everyone will remain seated.
All right, folks, they're bringing in the jury. Sarah Boone, who has waited 4 years for this moment, has attempted to litigate things on her own, went through 8 different attorneys. Now is judgment day. Now, in just a few moments, she will find out what the rest of her life will be. Will she have an opportunity to walk out of that courtroom tonight? Or will she be locked up for the rest of her life? Second-degree murder,
locked up for the rest,
manslaughter, culpable negligence, all on the table for this jury.
State, do you recognize our jury?
Yes, which reached a verdict in less than an hour and a half. Let's listen in.
Members of the jury, you may be seated. Thank you. Members of our jury, good evening. I understand that you've come to a verdict in this case.
Yes.
If you could please hand the verdict form to the deputy, please. Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, if you could please publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 9th Judicial Circuit and in Orange County, Florida, case number 2020 CF 2603, the state of Florida versus Sarah Boone. Verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the second degree as charged in the information. Still Same Y'all, dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, on this 25th day of October 2024. The form has been signed by the foreperson.
Madam Clerk, please poll our jury.
Juror seat number 1, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror seat number 2, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror seat number 3, is this your true
Yes,
and
it
correct
is.
verdict? Juror seat number 4, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror seat number 5, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror seat number 6, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, ma'am.
Members of our jury, again, I want to thank you for your time, your sacrifice, and your attention in this matter. I know that we spent almost 2 weeks together and it was not taken lightly, and I really appreciate the time and the effort and the sacrifice that you put into this case. I want to advise you now of your final instruction. Members, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and your consideration in this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak to anyone about your deliberations, you are also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, from the attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror, be it the victim's family.
2 or 3 victim impact statements, sir.
Okay. Mr. Owens, do you plan on presenting any evidence during the course of the sentencing hearing, sir?
Probably some testimony from Dr. Harper.
Okay. All right. How long do you think, state, that you would need?
You mean timing wise, or are we thinking?
A quantum of time, sir. Yeah, well, normally it takes about 30 days or so. I'm confirming with Anita as to availability. I just want to know from your side of the ledger, how much time? Okay, 15 minutes. How much time do you think you're going to need to produce anything from your side of the ledger, sir? Mr. Owens.
I'd say 30 minutes,
Okay.
30 to 45.
So if we set this for an hour, that would be sufficient.
Parties agree.
Okay.
State agrees.
Is that sufficient, Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Okay, all right, give me a moment.
I has to go on life in prison with no damn parole.
Woman again.
We can set this matter for 1:30 in the afternoon for sentencing on December 2. State, is that acceptable? It's a Monday.
I just status hearing, but I'll make it work.
I can move it to later if necessary.
I'm co-counsel on it.
Okay, defense.
You want me-
Yes, sir.
That's Monday, December 2 at 1:30.
Yes, sir.
I can be here.
Ma'am, you've been adjudicated guilty. I now remand you into the custody of the Orange County Jail pending sentencing on December 2 at 1:30. State, anything else we need to address?
Not from the state.
Defense. All right, thank you very much. We're off the record.
There you saw the family of George Torres getting some sense of justice tonight, but they'll have an opportunity to address the court directly when it's time for victim impact statements on December the 2nd. She could get more 16 to life is the range that the judge will have. Right now, she's being taken into custody formally as a convicted killer. However, she's been in custody for 4 years already. So this is not necessarily anything new for Sarah Boone. But once the conviction goes down in Florida, we see this all the time. Inside the courtroom, they take him into custody, and many times they will take their fingerprints once again in the courtroom and then take them back into custody. And what you're seeing here, James Owens, her attorney, and think about what he did. He was watching this program and saw that someone accused of murder in Florida didn't have an attorney and no one was coming forward. So he did. He's not even from Orlando. And here he is on the night that his client has been convicted, speaking with her and, you know, I guess preparing her for whatever's next. And the next phase is significant. It's absolutely important. And December 2nd, a big, big day in all of this. And it's a big day for George's family because the trial took on a little bit of a different nature because of the battered spouse syndrome defense. George Torres, the one who died a horrific death inside the suitcase, was then put on trial. And that's not easy for the family. But they're there for him, and I am sure they will be there again on December 2nd when the woman who murdered their loved one gets sentenced.
Damn, so she only get 16 years to life, man. She need to be serving goddamn 30 years, 40 years sentence for what the hell she did. You know what I mean? Like, that man suffocated in that damn suitcase overnight. She just left him there. Like, really? 16 years? She could possibly get out earlier than 16 years. Hell nah. Nah, she need to be doing a full sentence for that shit. And she don't even have any remorse for that shit at all.
And I could see it, even though it was just a profile shot. You could tell that this absolutely impacted Sarah Boone. I never met her. I don't know her, but I know that she was hopeful. But that moment was very real for her when they said guilty of second-degree murder. And you look at it now, all of a sudden, that plea deal might be looking a little bit sweeter. Still with us, our think tank tonight. Bernardo Villalona, Paulette Lofton, Ben Chu, and Philip Dubé, Deputy Public Defender out in L.A., who's been with us through the years, as have the other members of our think tank covering this story, this case, and this saga. Philip, I'll get your reaction first to this rather swift verdict, less than an hour and a half on a Friday night.
Yeah, I'm actually wearing a red tie tonight, Vinny, but to be honest with you, there's a lot of pink in it because I think of it almost like our purple states. There's a mix of the blue and the red, and I was really on the fence with so much of her case. She truly believed in her truth. She spoke truth to power, but the jury rejected her truth. She truly psyched herself up into believing that she was a battered partner, but the jury clearly rejected her truth. She is the prime example. This is the case why we settle. And it is so tragic that she did not take the 15 years against the advice of counsel. And unfortunately, we can only advise our clients. We cannot force them to take the deal. And she exercised her right. She held her head up high and took that stand, and she lost. And it's sad because the truth be told, she is never getting out.
So you don't think she's getting out under these circumstances?
Never.
Because of the torture?
She will die. No, just because it's going to be an indeterminate sentence. She will be at the mercy of the Florida Department of Corrections Parole Board. I sincerely doubt that they will ever cut her loose. She's just going to be spending the rest of her life there as an inmate with a reg number.
Bernardo Villalona, your reaction to tonight's verdict?
I'm not surprised that this jury found Sarah Boone guilty. First off, when you think of the callousness and that she actually had this man inside of that suitcase, inside of that coffin, and walked away and had him there for hours, where she was the only person that could have gotten him out. I think that really stuck with the jury. Also, she never showed any type of remorse or compassion during her testimony or throughout the trial itself. Plus her own words in that videotape where she's cursing and not even caring for his pleas. Taking that all into account and also the use of the bat, she did herself in. And obviously the jury did not find her credible. Obviously the jury did not buy the battered syndrome and didn't buy the expert testimony in this case and found her guilty and found her guilty fairly quickly.
Paulette Lofton, your thoughts, your reaction to this verdict tonight?
I'm not surprised either. I think Philip was correct. Sometimes you just have to go to trial. I think Sarah committed herself to believing her story and believing her truth. And sometimes you just have to do the trial. Obviously, in hindsight, she definitely should have taken the deal. But she stuck to her story. I think she did have some things on her side. The fact that the judge allowed all of that evidence in of the prior abuse, the fact that she had an expert on her side saying she was a battered woman. I'm pretty sure she went into this feeling somewhat confident. Obviously, when the jury came back in an hour and a half when she received that message, I'm sure her stomach sank.
Ben Chu, what did you think of her reaction tonight?
Well, Vinny, I just have to push back a little bit out of the greatest respect for Philip, and I have enormous respect for him. I reject the idea that people have their own truth. I think there's one truth. And the truth was that she did this. And whatever she has convinced herself is true in her own mind is not relevant. Nor
she really thinks she ain't do nothing wrong. She really think that she what she did was rightfully justice. That she was allowed to just put him, in the suitcase, zip it up, walk away, and let him die. She really thinks she's in the right for that. Yeah, then she deserves every bit of sentence she gets. Yeah, she don't need to get out. She need to die in prison. They need to put her ass in that suitcase every day for an hour, so she know how that shit feel.
Nor do I think it is a tragedy that she rejected the plea deal. She should have taken the plea deal. I don't think it's a tragedy. I just think it's a mistake. A tragedy is when an innocent person dies. I don't think it's a tragedy here. I think she's a mistake. And if she deluded herself, the fault is hers.
And here's her final moments in the courtroom. One thing about where she is right now, there are some defendants, and we've covered cases like that, where they get out on bond and they're outside waiting for their trial. Then they get convicted, and then it's a major change in their life. Bernarda, how much of a change do you think this will be for Sarah Boone, going from inmate in the jail waiting for your trial to now a ward of the state going to the state penitentiary?
Well, there's going to be a huge change for Sarah Boone, because you have to think that this trial and facing trial one day was giving her hope. Every day that she was waiting for her trial, she had hope of freedom at some point. And now today that has been taken away from her. So not only is she going to lose hope when she goes back to the jail, but she's also looking to go to a state prison, which is completely different from the housing facility where she's at now, where she was doing good and she was a model citizen to fellow inmates. Now she's going with the mind frame that she may die in jail one day. So what is her hope to keep on going inside of that prison while she's serving this sentence?
Let me ask you, Philip, what are those conversations like after someone's been convicted and you're the attorney, you're sitting there, you did the best you could do, the facts are what they are, the verdict is what it is. What is that conversation like? What is that moment like?
Well, the first thing I don't do is rub it in. I never, ever, ever whisper in there, see, I told you, you should have taken that deal. I don't. It's a tough moment, and I've said this repeatedly on your show, Vinny, and that is I've done 140 jury trials, and at every verdict, I get butterflies. I get nervous. I get a little queasy. And frankly, I feel the grief that she feels. And yeah, I agree with Ben. It was a huge mistake. It's sort of a hybrid mistake tragedy. Obviously, there's a victim here. There's a defendant who will never see the light of day again. But, I think she and her counsel, and just like myself when I do a trial, we truly believe in our defense. Otherwise, I would double, triple team my client with lawyers from my office to sit her down or any client down to say, we have zero chance. We are going to lose. You must take this deal. If you do not, you will never see the light of day again. And it sounds like that her previous 8 attorneys told her that they needed to settle on her behalf and that it would be too risky to go to trial, and she wouldn't listen. But in answer to your question, I don't rub it in. Instead, I commiserate with them. And in fact, sometimes I even hurl a few insults toward the system, toward the bench, toward prosecutors in my client's ear to console them a little bit so they understand that I'm with them. I never want my client to lose confidence or trust in me as their counsel. And I let them know immediately, we will appeal. It's not over. We're going to take it from here and we will fight for you to the bitter end. I want them to know that we will do that.
Yep. And she definitely going to try to appeal this because she feel like what she did was no wrong. They definitely gonna try to appeal this and you know what I mean, try to get her sentence overturned. But I doubt it. I don't think she ever gonna see the day of light again. Never. And rightfully so. She don't deserve to see no motherfucking daylight or none of that shit. Put her ass in a hole, put her ass in somewhere, and you know what I mean, where her ass is secluded by her damn self. You know what I'm saying? 24-hour fucking lockdown.
Paulette, looking at everything that's transpired tonight, and I'm that shot of George's family inside the courtroom, to go through this case and this trial, it was George who was, put on trial by the defense. That's what the defense was here. But they'll have their moment to speak about the impact of all of this at the sentencing. What are your thoughts about victim impact statements and its role in our system of justice?
I think victim impact statements are very, very important because I think as lawyers and obviously judges, we have so many cases that we do. We see so many trials, we do so many trials. Being a judge, you're presiding over so many different sets of facts. And those victim impact statements really humanize the facts that you're hearing. They are getting, the judges are listening to actual family members give their thoughts on what type of person he was. Obviously, we were shown many videos of George not being a stand-up guy. We heard testimony that this relationship was probably absolutely horrible. But it's going to give the family a chance to humanize him and to tell the court that he was a good person outside of the few videos that the court had been shown. So I think it has a huge impact. I think, obviously the defense's job in this case is to attack George. And I think that they did that. It's always difficult as a defense attorney to do that because you never want to speak ill of the dead. But unfortunately, you have to do that a little bit. But hopefully in the victim impact statements, they'll be able to rehabilitate the character that was torn down during the trial.
Ben Chu, I think about this couple and, we've used the term toxic relationship. That was the term we were throwing around during your trial, during the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. And these relationships exist behind closed doors. Things can get ugly. You fuel it with alcohol or something else and things get out of control.
In the Circuit Court of the 9th Judicial Circuit and in Orange County, Florida, case number 2020 CF 2603, the state of Florida versus Sarah Boone. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the second degree as charged in the information. Silvio, dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, on this 25th day of October 2024. The form has been signed by the holders.
Madam Clerk, please poll our jury.
Juror seat number 1, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror seat number 2, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, it is.
Juror seat number 3, is this your true and
Yes, it
correct
is.
verdict? Juror seat number 4, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror seat number 5, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror seat number 6, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes, ma'am.
Sarah Boone found guilty of second-degree murder in the suitcase murder trial. Big verdict on this Friday night here on Court TV. We're going to take you straight down to the courthouse in Orlando. Kelly Craft is there with Sarah Boone's attorney. Kelly.
Hey there, Vinny. Yeah, it didn't take very long for the jurors to return a verdict in this case. Sarah Boone guilty of second-degree murder. We are joined now by her defense counsel, who advocated for her vehemently throughout this trial. This is James Owens. James, what's your reaction to the verdict?
Just disappointed. Sarah's devastated. She's disappointed. We felt like we had a good defense with the facts that we had. Obviously, we had some hurdles to overcome for the state's evidence, and for whatever reason, the jury didn't see it our way. We respect the jury's decision. I'm sure that Sarah Boone is going to want to appeal. I believe that she does have potentially 2 or 3 good appellate issues. So the next thing in store is I think we've got sentencing set for, I believe, Monday, December the 2nd at 1:30. And we intend to call Dr. Harper as a witness to speak about her other mental health issues that she struggles with, and hopefully the court will consider that.
Mr. Owens, Sarah Boone was offered a plea deal in this case, manslaughter. She did not take it. What do you think now, having the verdict?
Well, ultimately, that's their decision. You know, they've got a couple of fundamental decisions. One is whether to plead guilty to anything, and the other is whether to go to trial, and the other is, you know, whether to testify, and then the other is whether to appeal. And so Sarah Boone maintained that she wanted a trial the entire time, and we did discuss, there were plea negotiations, and there were offers on the table for the lesser charge of manslaughter, but Sarah ultimately rejected those offers and wanted her day in court.
She felt, it seemed, throughout this entire trial, she seemed to be very upbeat. It seemed, though, I was getting the sense she really felt she hadn't done anything criminally wrong.
Well, I think, you know, I believe she's a better spouse, and I believe she believes she's a better spouse. Once she learned, and we gave her a bunch of material about the subject, once she learned, you know, what she had gone through with George Torres, I think she believed she was a better spouse. So we believed in that scenario that she was justified in defending herself. And so she felt good because she had.
Nah, locking somebody in a suitcase is not defending yourself. I ain't trying to hear that. She left that man there to die, like, so basically tortured. Ain't a battered. She's a battered spouse. Battered. What the hell? She really feel like she ain't do nothing wrong. She really think justifying locking that man in a suitcase is defending herself. That's crazy, bro.
A defense, and she had lawyers. You know, initially she was going to represent herself, and then she did that for a while, and I think she appreciated the fact that we came in, myself, Tony Henderson, and Kevin Beck, and then our team. We had, you know, 5 or 6 people working on the case for the last 45 days trying to get ready for trial, and I think she appreciated our efforts. She knew we were working hard. I've been here in Orlando for 3 weeks, and then the rest of the team's been here for 2 weeks, so we've been doing everything we could do to represent her to the best of our ability, and that's what we did with the time that we had.
You really put up a good fight. Were you surprised that the jurors came back as quickly as they did?
I was. I think that, you know, the rebuttal evidence where they played a bunch of videotapes of off Sarah's phone where there were some interactions with Sarah and George, I think that affected the jury.
What do you think another big challenge was for you in this case?
Well, of course, the suitcase video is difficult to deal with. And then, you know, her interrogation, the 2-hour interrogation at the sheriff's department. So, I mean, you know, we have evidence. That's probably the best evidence in a case, is the videotape oftentimes is the best evidence. And, you know, we had some big hurdles to overcome. And obviously the jury, and I respect the jury's decision, saw it a different way than we presented.
During your closing arguments, one of the things that you talked about was we're in 2024, and the perception that the state may be trying to give that she in a way deserved this, that she was the aggressor. You talked about how men are taught not to put a hand on a woman. I thought that that was pretty powerful. I thought that was going to resonate a little bit more with the jury.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it was a long trial, and the testimony came out. The state got in a bunch of evidence about, like I said, the video interactions between George and Sarah. And some of that, it seemed like Sarah was berating him a little bit and talking down to him a little bit. And, the state had argued that this was a mutual abusive situation, that Sarah verbally, emotionally maybe abused him. So I think there was some of that going on in the relationship. It was a dysfunctional, toxic relationship. Obviously, those two didn't need to be together. But they, for whatever reason, they could not stay away from each other. And even when she had been battered multiple times by him over time, for whatever reason, they couldn't break up. And I think everybody around, law enforcement, the neighbors, family, all knew how bad the situation was. But for whatever reason, they were drawn to each other and couldn't let go.
The judge made it clear before the verdict was read that he did not want any outbursts in the courtroom. We had one earlier from George Torres's family. No real reaction from Sarah Boone. I just saw her talking with you, but obviously, as you were mentioning, seems to be not very happy, devastated with the verdict.
Yeah, she couldn't believe it. We were optimistic. We were optimistic, and I understand, these things happen, and there's some murder charge. So, somebody died. So it's difficult for a jury sometimes not to come back with something, and they came back with the highest charge. I was hoping maybe for something lesser, but we understand. Sarah's in shock. It happened, and then she was escorted out of the court fairly quickly, so we really didn't get a chance to talk that much. She said she would call me tomorrow. I'm going to be driving back home, and we'll talk. I'll be on the road for 6 hours, so we'll talk for however long. But I explained to her she had a right to an appeal, and she had 2 or 3 good appellate issues. So I told her to keep her head up.
Mr. Owens, you were not her first attorney. She went through several attorneys. How was she to work with?
She was fine. I think once she realized, it wasn't just me, and I spent a lot of time down here with her. And then once she realized Tony Henderson really helped me out a lot with Sarah Boone.
Work with.
And, I've represented some difficult clients. I've been doing it quite a while. But Sarah, was, of course, she didn't want to give up the power because she'd had the case for 4.5 years. She had so many different lawyers. But I think once she started to trust us and realized that we really cared about her, we really believed in her, and we wanted to do everything we could to fight for her, I think she finally, it didn't take too long for her to develop a sense that we were really genuinely trying to help her. And I think once she saw how hard we were working and everything we were trying to do to help her, we didn't have a problem.
And you got involved with this case because you saw that she had taken out an ad.
Yeah, as you know, the court had ruled that she forfeited her right to a lawyer, a public lawyer. And so she was going to have to represent herself. And I think she went to a couple of hearings and realized that that's a lot harder than it looks. And that's when she had reached out for somebody in the private bar to take the case. And I came down and visited with her, and I agreed to do it. So we were in it to win it. We tried everything we could do to present the case in a fashion that the jury would consider her side.
I think one of the biggest moments was when you got the expert of the states to talk about the fact that she did believe that Sarah Boone suffered from battered spouse syndrome. I thought that was going to be a big game changer for you.
Well, it was. I've got some disagreements about how that was all handled because she came out with an opinion that she had never expressed before. And
then you had to conduct a deposition right there in court.
Yeah, I've never had to do that. That was a first, but it was a unique situation. Of course, the judge had set a date certain about trying the case. So I had the case for about 45 days, but we tried to schedule Dr. Werner's deposition. I believe we took it on October the 4th. And then later on, she came up with another opinion that I wasn't aware of until in the courtroom. And so the judge allowed me to take a deposition. I never heard of it happening before. First time it ever happened, but it did. And, we did the best that we could to counter that and then to cross-examine her. But yeah, I think initially she had said she hadn't made up her mind about it. But I think after a little bit of time, she decided to go ahead and give the opinion that that Sarah did suffer from battered spouse, and that corroborated what Dr. Harper had said, that she did suffer from battered spouse syndrome. So I guess that was a good of that.
Any thought in hindsight that maybe there was a motion to eliminate for you not to use the battered spouse syndrome defense, to not talk about self-defense? Obviously, you got to be able to do that. The state was very clear. She needs to say there's an overt act. She eventually did. She said his hand coming out of the suitcase was that overt act. In hindsight, could there have been another strategy that you could have taken that could have been more successful? Maybe not argue battered spouse syndrome?
No, I don't think so. I think, you know, what she was saying in that 2-minute video to George while he was in the suitcase, I'm convinced was tied to the trauma that she had received from the abuse that she had suffered from George. And I just think Dr. Harper, you know, it's a complex syndrome. It really is. And it's difficult for lay people to understand. I've tried to talk to, you know, the psychologist, the psychiatrist about it to try to understand it. You know, why somebody wouldn't leave that situation. Why, you know.
Yeah, she could have just left the situation instead of doing all that. Why you just ain't leave? You know what I'm saying? Look, now she's about to do life in prison because she couldn't just leave the damn situation. Should have just left. Now look.
They're getting beaten up. They're getting stabbed in the leg. Why wouldn't you leave that situation? It's one of those things. It's a head scratcher for a lot of people. And so that's the reason you bring in expert testimony, is to try to explain that to a jury, what was going on. But it's difficult for people to really understand.
When Sarah Boone refused the plea offer, the judge made it very clear to her that the minimum he could sentence her to would be 22 years in prison. Is she prepared for the sentencing? It's going to be in December.
I don't think she's prepared. I don't believe that. You know, I think she was in hopes. You know, she was excited about us, and she felt like she had a defense and that we were doing everything, and she had the experts lined up. So I don't think she was thinking about this at all. I think she was very optimistic. That's why she was optimistic during the trial. Yes, she was happy with us every day. She was happy with what we were doing. And of course, you know, she understood that it was a valid defense in Florida. Battered spouse, using it to justify the force that you use. So, yeah, she's devastated, and she hadn't come to grips. Like I say, I'll talk to her tomorrow, but she was just stunned today.
Vinny also has a question. Vinny, what's the question?
Yeah, I had a couple questions for James. First, at the sentencing, will this judge have much discretion in what the sentence can be? And do you expect Sarah to express any sense of remorse at sentencing?
Hell
at
no.
the sentencing, will the judge, Vinny's asking, at the sentencing, will the judge have any discretion? This is her first felony. The judge made that very clear. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, will Sarah Boone say something? Will she express any sort of remorse for what took place? Will she make a statement, an allocution at her sentencing? I know you have to take some preparation time for that.
I think the prosecutor had said the low end of the guidelines was 22 years, and I think the judge told Sarah that. So I think that probably is the minimum, unless there's something I'm missing, maybe a downward departure. I don't know that she would qualify, but you know, the judge has a range, and the judge has the discretion, and the judge, you know, is going to hear from the victim's family, and then the judge is going to hear from Dr. Harper, and ultimately the judge is going to have to hear from Sarah Boone about this. I don't know what her position is going to be, but we'll see.
Mr. Owens, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice work.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it.
Man, her ass don't have no remorse for what she done. You know what I'm saying? She definitely don't have no remorse. She think what she did was right. Now look, gotta face life in prison instead of just walking away from the situation. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Well, we'll be back on December 2nd for sentencing. We definitely gonna go live. You know what I mean, when during the sentencing. So make sure y'all subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it if you can. I'm gonna go ahead and get up out of here, man. All right, peace.